Hey everybody, it's Alex with my friend the reader. I wanted to do a bit of a special video on what do we read when the world's falling apart. So it's been a while since I've done a video, and I apologize for that. I've been busy both with work, but also there's been a provincial election here in Ontario that I was helping out with. Unfortunately, at least if you somewhat share my political opinions, it went quite badly. We elected Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservative Party, which some people have compared Ford to our Trump. It is quite worrying in terms of the kinds of policies that might come forward. Cuts to social programs, healthcare, education, privatization of services, attacks on union rights, attacks on employees. There were several reforms, including increases to the minimum wage. They're now in jeopardy. Although the traditional third party, the Social Democratic Party here in Ontario, made some breakthroughs, the prospects of 4 years of our own Trump is somewhat scary. So part of me thought, okay, well, how do I talk about this in books? And I guess one of the things I want to maybe ask, maybe give my own opinion or my own experiences, is what kind of books do we read when the world is falling apart? I think the last few years have seen some significant electoral results that have been concerning to those who are progressive or left-wing. We had Brexit in, I think it was July 25th or 2016 now, yeah, in July 2016, that saw Britain leave the European Union largely on a quite right-wing and xenophobic campaign. We saw the election of Donald Trump in November of 2016, and now here in Ontario we have this little, not quite as significant worldwide, but definitely for those living here, a somewhat significant electoral outcome. So what do we do in those times? Do we read books that help us understand what happened, or do we read books that help us escape? Do we read fiction, non-fiction? Do we read things that are whimsical approaches to these difficult circumstances? I know in the contents of Brexit, we had that book by Ali Smith's Autumn that kind of tried to tackle the state of mind of the UK in the post-Brexit world. I know many people thought that was an interesting approach to delve into some of the issues. I felt it was a bit pessimistic. I've only read Autumn from Ali Smith. I haven't read Winter. I haven't read How to Be Both. Some of her more recognized work. Autumn, of course, was shortlisted for the Booker, universally praised. I liked it. It was the writing is very lively, at times a little too smart, I felt. But I also felt the book was incredibly pessimistic. And not that pessimism has no place in literature. Confronting dark political periods is one of the things that writing good fiction is supposed to do. But I'm not sure if it captured the very contradictory nature of the Brexit vote. Now, when Trump was elected, now I'm not American, and during the primaries, I was someone who supported Bernie Sanders. Obviously, nonetheless, you don't want Donald Trump and everything that he represented, the kinds of bigotry that he not only articulated, but emboldened in the United States. So in the immediate aftermath, I went back and I looked through my Goodreads, and it was hard to figure out what I was reading. I guess the most memorable piece was actually one of nonfiction, and that was Thomas Frank's book, Listen Liberal. Thomas Frank is probably best known for his book, What's the Problem with Kansas that he wrote after the 2004 election, an attempt to try to understand why traditional Democratic voters had shifted so much to the right in electing George W. Bush. Traditional Midwestern states with strong unions, strong working class traditions were voting very much against their economic interests. I never read it, but I saw him on, I think, Jon Stewart and whatnot. Listen Liberal was a little more directed towards the Democratic Party establishment. It was written before the results of the 2016. It was written over the summer of that year. And nonetheless, it provided incredible insights in terms of a political reckoning of what happened. And Frank's thesis was that the Democratic Party had shifted from a party of the working class, of fighting for economic justice, to a part of a much broader population, to a party that catered to the needs and the whims of this upper echelon of the middle class, professionals like lawyers, insurance salesmen, or in the insurance industry, the medical tech industry, all sorts of sections of the economy that benefited from things like liberalized trade, deregulation of the economy, weak unions, and because of that, the Democrats exposed themselves, despite demographic changes that should benefit them, like the growth of the Latin American or Latino population in the United States, the leftward tilt of millennials. Nonetheless, they were suffering because they weren't offering programmatically the kinds of economic policies that benefited working class Americans. So in many senses, there's all sorts of explanations for the reason of Trump's election, and because the election was so close, every one of those explanations have merit. But Frank's argument, I think, was quite persuasive, and in the context of trying to understand something, I think it offers some insight that's hopefully has some sort of impact. I'm not sure what my American watchers, what they read in the immediate aftermath of that electoral apocalypse. But I have to say, with the election that happened last week, I didn't want to read anything like that. And I was in the midst of reading the second book of the Three Body Problem trilogy by, I'm going to have to look up his name, by Liu Cixin. The Three Body Problem won the Hugo. It was the first translated book, I think, that won the Hugo. And I was reading the second book, or listening to the second book, The Dark Forest. Incredibly escapist kind of literature. It's science fiction. It's hard science fiction, not something I'm particularly attracted to generally. But it's the story of a civilization called Triceloris, which is the closest suns or solar system with life to us, that has decided to... because of the destruction of its own environment, because of a very chaotic solar system where there's three suns, hence the three-body problem, has decided to attempt to invade Earth, which is 400 years away. And in order to do so, they send these tiny microscopic things called saphons to effectively sabotage all physics experiments moving forward in order to frustrate the development of Earth's technology, hence facilitating the eventual invasion. The three-body problem takes place in the first 5 years of Earth discovering, or humans discovering, that this is going to happen. The Dark Forest takes place in the next 200 years. Anyways, that's the book I picked up, where I was in the middle of, and I grew engrossed by it, and I focused on it. So interesting that in this particular occasion I wanted something as escapist as that. So anyways, I just thought those two reading experiences kind of gave me just brought forward some questions in terms of what should we read when the world is falling apart. Literature offers both escapist potential. Reading in general also offers exploratory and exploratory potential in terms of finding political arguments or historical understandings or explorations to help us understand what's happened. And ideally also solutions as to shift the political tide. So I think both kinds of approaches in the midst of political uncertainty are fair, but I'm curious, what do you read? When the world is falling apart, what books do you go to? Do you go to a comfort, or do you go to something that challenges you, or do you escape? I'm just curious what people are thinking and what people are reading in those moments. Anyways, that's the video for now. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.